Transformative Scientific Leadership, How to Foster Excellent Research with Social Impact. Now, across this meeting, we've talked a lot about artificial intelligence and machines. To finish it, though, we're going to bring it back to people and human intelligence. And when we talk about that, it's not just human intelligence, there's a lot of other factors that pile into transformative leadership, from individuals and organisations that can galvanise research and maximise social impact. So factors you might expect, like individual expertise and communication skills and the particular research setup, but also factors like location and the size of research centres, their links with the communities around them, and the role that they have with local, national and international media. Does the best talent always inevitably gravitate to the biggest institutions? What are the advantages and challenges of research centres outside the largest cities? And the other aspects of this that I hope our panel of 5 researchers and leaders will add. Now, rather than any formal presentations, what we're going to do, I'll bring each of them on in turn, have just a couple of questions to kind of establish their presence, and then by the end of it, we'll have 5 people and a panel, and then I'll ask some questions, and hopefully you will ask some questions, make some comments, because this affects every single one of us. Going alphabetically, which means we start with our only male panellist, Jose Bustelo, Director of the Salamanca Cancer Research Centre. Jose, come on up. You can stand or sit as you wish. I'm going to move you to this chair over here. I have plans for this stage. So give us a brief line of what you do, both as director of the centre and as a researcher.
Yeah, well, as a researcher, I am a cancer researcher, so I'm trying to understand cancer drivers that are involved in a number of tumors, more specifically now in T-cell lymphomas. It's something that the Caixa has granted for my work. And well, I am now the new director of the Salamanca Cancer Research Center, which is one of the few centers in Spain that are focusing in cancer together with the CNAO and perhaps the BIO. And well, this is my first term. My vision is that I want to change the center, prepare the center for the next 10 years. So that involves bringing up new people, updating the equipment, foster our training programs, etc. So it's an exciting time for me at this moment.
Yeah, and it'll be getting the balance right between you changing the centre and the centre changing you.
Any new task that you do is a learning process. And I'm learning how to be a director. Nobody knows how to become a good director.
Okay, you may pick up a few tips.
The end of it.
You may pick up some tips during this session as well. So second panellist is Ana Luisa Carvalho, Vice President of the CNC Centre for Neuroscience and Cell Biology in Coimbra. So hello, have a seat if you wish. And again, tell us a tiny bit about your research and also what being Vice President of this centre means.
Okay, so I'm a neuroscientist. I work in mechanisms of learning and memory, cellular and molecular mechanisms. So in synapse biology, I'm interested in how neurons get excited and how that then reflects on the behavior of animals, and also how that goes wrong in neurodevelopmental disorders. And my La Caixa project is about that aspect, so how channels can be disrupted and that leading to neurodevelopmental disorders, and how we can tackle that to treat diseases. And as you said, I'm a vice president at the Center for Neuroscience and Cell Biology at the University of Coimbra, so I coordinate one of the research areas, the neuroscience research area, and I've done this job for the last 3-4 years. And for me, actually, leadership is really about taking responsibility. And you have the aspect that is about the strategic lines of research that you want to invest on. That's one aspect. So the recruitment, talent recruitment for the areas that you think could be areas where the research center excels. There's also the culture that you want to promote. And in my case, I think I support a culture that is supportive for the researchers, but at the same time challenging and ambitious. And I'd say the third role is about providing the professional support, so the infrastructure, the technical infrastructures, but also the support offices. We've talked a lot about technology transfer offices and the science communication offices. So this third aspect is also an aspect that I have invested on.
Okay, I think you've kind of flashed forward to several themes that I think we might get onto later as well. Thirdly, come to Olga Geniu, I hope I pronounced that right, Scientific Director at the Medina Foundation in Granada, where she works with low-income countries on discovering drugs and treatments to tackle tropical diseases. Olga, can you, same thing really, give us a quick intro to your dual role as both researcher and being director?
I'm also a chemist by training, and the work that we are performing in Granada, we are just a center focused on drug discovery from small molecules produced by microbial strains. So a major objective is just to manage to get novel chemistry out of the space that is being produced by these small molecules libraries. And this way we collaborate, as in the case of the Caixa project, just for neglected diseases, just to find additional initial compounds that could be developed into the clinic. But at the same time, we are also working in other infectious diseases as well, in neurodegeneration and cancer research. So my major interest as a biologist or biochemist in this sense is just to understand how these molecules are being produced by the microbial strains and how these factories can be engaged in developing the chemical space that we have at hand just to be using in the discovery programs.
And Olga, I think the Medina Foundation's slogan is discovering the future. So isn't it slightly, I mean, do you ever find it slightly odd that you're doing it in this ancient city is the place you're doing it from?
Yes, that's a big contrast, I mean, where we are based. Yeah, but in fact, what we want to aim is just to capture this space that is being produced by the microbial environment in this sense, and capture that in our libraries to be used in the discovery programs. Many of these molecules cannot be produced in the traditional way, so we're using all the tools, all the omics that are at hand at this moment, just to be able to translate that into compounds that can be used.
Don't worry, I know Salamanca's an name, so I'm not dissing any other cities as well. Okay, let's go on to a penultimate member of our pentet, or quintet, Maite Mendioros, director of the Navarra Biomed in Navarre, or at least she has been director there until very recently, but just a few days ago, Maite announced that she was resigning. So I suppose, Maite, the obvious question to ask you is, why that came about? Is that partly down to trying to do all the things that are involved in having multiple roles?
Yes, and we can talk about it later on, but I resigned recently because, well, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm a neurologist, and I am running a laboratory which is focused on discovering new epigenetic biomarkers for helping to improve the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases, and we are doing this. And at the same time, I was running a center, which is a public biomedical research center in Navarra, and it's very difficult. I am an example of the difficulty in balance personal life with high demanding jobs.
Yes, it's almost like we've forgotten that third factor. There's research, there's being in charge of something, and there's this weird thing called a personal life.
Yeah,
what is that?
I'm sorry, we can explain later. We've got diagrams.
Later on, we can talk about this.
Okay, and I mean, is it fair to say that you're not saying you did this because it's impossible to run an institution and be a researcher? It's just in your particular circumstances.
Yeah, it's not impossible, but sometimes life is life, and I was running a center, running a research group, and I found myself in a very difficult situation, family situation, with some health issues in my parents and a lot of care to be done with my children. So I was like in the middle of a sandwich, a generational sandwich, and sometimes I was thinking, I'm lost, I'm a ghost. Where is Maite? Maite has disappeared. So I had to choose, and I chose to resign from the thing that I was less attached to, right? Which was the director position, because the other things, I love it.
It's hard to resign from your family as well.
You can, and I don't want to. And maybe it's beyond the crystal ceiling theme, that it's a fact. It's also an impeachment of the kind of life that sometimes scientists have to live, because we are very devoted to our jobs, we are working a lot, but we are human beings, and we have another life, our life with our families and everything. So I think it's very interesting to to have a reflection on this topic.
Okay, much more from Maite later, but completing our panel, we've Marisol Soengas, who comes at this from a Slightly different vantage point in that rather than being a researcher who's also a leader at a research centre, she's a researcher who's also president of a scientific association. Specifically, I can't try and pronounce it the correct way, but I'll spell it out, ASEICA, which is pronounced...
Aseica?
Yeah, I can't say that. Spanish Association for Cancer Research. So Marisol, what's your take on this and how significant scientific associations are in terms of supporting scientific leadership and building scientific leadership?
So, well, they are critical. I think I give some examples later on of what we've done, but I think we can take advantage of the power of getting a lot of researchers unite and just to work together. But let me introduce myself so you can see in this journey how I went. So I am the head of the melanoma group at the Spanish National Cancer Research Center. I'm also the dean for academic affairs there, so that's how I got into supervising and helping PhD and postdoc students. But kind of 6-7 years ago or so, José Bustelo invited me, said, "Oh, you should apply and get into the board of ACEICA." And at that time, I was like, okay, so I'm already very busy at the lab. And then when we were discussing here, trying to juggling, different responsibilities. But I'm glad that I went into ACEICA. Initially, I started the Women in Science group, which was for me an opportunity to just, start being involved in active, advocacy, in this case for women. But then, so the opportunity rose to consider for the presidency. And that was even more complicated because I was not particularly a person that liked to talk to the politicians or complain at politicians. But I'm glad that I did because, I learned that, we can help not only in our lab, but we can help the community. And I will talk about what do we do in ACEICA, but we don't only have groups for women in science, also for young investigators, providing grants, starting, small funding, also mentoring, networking, trying to integrate basic clinical researchers. So as your first question, so yes, scientific associations can do a lot of good with a lot of also work, I can tell you.
With a lot of work as well. Okay, so I'm going to have a couple of general questions from me, and then I'm going to throw it open because I imagine there's a lot of different things here. So I suppose before we get too far down the line about talking about transformative scientific leadership, how important do you think actually it is, this quality of leadership? Is it something that all scientists need to develop a bit of skill in, or is it just for a few people to be able to do it? Jose.
Well, I think you have some inborn traits. Some people are social, they have leadership intrinsic. You have to learn how to deal with leadership, but I think some people are suited and some people are not suited. And then there is a third people that are pathological that should not be a director of a center. So I think it's, I don't think that everybody should be a director if they don't like to. But if they are inclined to do it, it's fine. And actually, you can learn in the process.
But leadership isn't just about running a whole thing. It can be just the person on the team who is the leader or something like that.
Yes, but it's not. Each type of leadership entails different features. If you are a leader in an association, it's a different type of leadership than if you are leading a group of people working in the same thing. And in a big center where you have to integrate many visions, many egos, many other strategic decisions. So it's different. For example, if you are working in a lab, maybe you don't have to deal with politicians, as Marisol said. But if you are a director, you must talk to politicians. And you have to relate with them and negotiate with them and knowing how to negotiate with them. So it's a different level. So each leadership has its different requirements, and maybe some people are exceptional group leaders, and probably they are not good center directors, for example.
We have a phrase in England about promoting someone to their level of incompetence.
Yeah.
You need to go not too far, but to the point where they are still very useful.
Yeah.
I think you wanted to come in.
Yes, I think also something that we need to consider is that typically one used to think about leader in a very particular way. Usually we're male, right? And people with a very, I would say, not only kind of character and determination, but so now I think we are seeing more and more a different kind of leadership. And this sometimes for women, it can be a bit challenging because on the one hand, a woman that is determined can be perceived as aggressive when we are not. So, and this is something that fortunately we just as determined as male. And then and this is one thing with the different kinds of approach to leadership. More integrative, more collaborative, more imposing. So, and sometimes you have to do a little bit of...
And there is actual proper hard research on this, where they've actually given the same script to a male and a female and discovered that the woman might be perceived as aggressive and the man might be perceived as commanding or something.
Yeah. So in that, I think part of what we, as also having people that, so in positions of leadership, women in positions of leadership is helping. And what you said, so at different times you have to adopt different, I guess, strategies to leadership. But it's something that you also learn. And that's why it's important to have workshops to talk about this and then to not also mentoring, but also sponsoring people to move forward. I was asked to be a director. I mean, that was good. And so I think we also should help others too in the process.
Mate, I know you're going to come in a minute. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I agree with you, Marisol. And the thing is that sometimes I was also asked to be. And there is a kind of leader which is a natural leader that everybody can see them. But there is also a leader who is built up. I mean, we can build leaders. And there are people who may be very good at leadership, and maybe another kind of leadership, like cooperative leadership. And you need to remove the soil and to see where these people is, and to help them to have a place in the leadership. And this is, I think, a very interesting thing to do for the institutions, because you are missing this kind of intelligence in the leadership positions if you are not doing that.
So it's a bit like politics. Sometimes the people who desperately want to be in charge are the last people you want in charge. And there's somebody who needs to be nudged into the middle sometimes, who has the skills without realising it.
So I think one thing is the characteristics of the leadership, the type of leadership that you get. But the other thing is the vision of the leader, and that's very important too. So I think it needs to be clear for the people selecting who is going to be the leader, what kind of vision there is, where is it that the institution is going. So it's not just the style, but the content of it is very important, because there's different types of research institutes, for example, that invest on different aspects of research. And so that the content, so the vision that is going to be implemented, I think needs to be clear to the community, and that's not always the case.
But isn't there a sort of two-way street here? Because it's a bit like Jose was saying, he's only just taken over as director. Now, if he has all these ideas in advance, it's also likely once he's actually running the thing, he's going to see problems with some of that and have to change his vision, rather than somebody goes, this is what we're going to do in the next 5 years, without being open to change.
Of course, you need to be open to change. I totally agree that it's a learning process, of course, and there needs to be flexibility. But I think there's different mindsets, different views of how research can be done, and how a specific research center, given its circumstances, its location, how it's inserted in a community, whether it's at a university or a private institute, there's different visions about that. Yeah. And I think those visions sometimes only come across during the leadership process, and they should be clear from the start when the leader is selected. And people that go for leadership should have a clear vision of what is it that they are promoting. And it seems to me that sometimes it's not the case. They just happen to get to that place.
Well, we might try and get on to how we try and stop that happening later, but Olga, I think you wanted to come in and show so.
I fully agree with what you have been mentioning, but one point as well is that the leader on one side needs to be inspiring for the rest of the group in this sense, and he needs to be adapting the kind of leadership according to the team, but also at the same time ensuring that he's just gathering the best team that he can, because the success only relies on the excellence of the team. So he doesn't need to be at the top. Or she, yes, I don't care in this sense. But that's the point, and then you need to be just evolving in the time as well. You have a style, and this would mean just be relying on the needs of the project. It depends on the size of the institute and the challenges there. So this type of commitment that is really important, just to have this interaction at all levels, and also having the commitment and the responsibility to be the head in this case, and interaction with external partners and the stakeholders. But the style is really, really demanding in this case.
Okay, just before I bring back Jose and Marisol, I'm just going to say we've got one of these interesting panels here, which I call self-sustaining, in that basically once you've asked them the first question, they will just keep rolling off each other indefinitely. So I will try and move it on.
Yeah, no, I try to argue against this concept of dichotomy of leadership, of whether you are just a leader or a leader that has cooperativity. For me, a leader that is just a leader is not a leader. For me, being a leader means that you have to engage people, as you mentioned, that all people, not only the scientists, all people, the students, the administration, have a feeling for the institution. Because if you get this working together, that makes much better, and you will do everything. Because, I mean, you can entice your PIs to do something, but if the administration don't feel the same, then you will be also with problems. So I think leadership is a combination of many things. It's just the difficulty of being leader, right? But for me, this old-fashioned leader, you know, raising a flag and just follow me, this is
but
totally
they exist.
They exist.
No, but
you were miming a whip there. That was
I also object that this concept of leadership is a male thing, because I know many female things that are exactly the same. So it's not a question of gender, it's a question of attitude.
No, absolutely.
No, numbers are numbers.
No, we didn't say that. No, the point is that there is different attitudes, and we are perceived differently if you were doing the same work. But so in terms of whether leadership is, so ideally, in an ideal scenario, so it will be good that you get funding, that you have the flexibility to hire the team that you want, and you have the visibility, you have an idea, and then you get a strategic plan. But sometimes this is not what happens. What happens is you are given a budget that is much smaller, that you may not even fire or hire the people that you want. And so I guess the challenge there is, in those scenarios, is how you, knowing the system and knowing the people that you have there, how to rewire the study so that then your institute and your people are happy and working together. And that's where the leadership is, when you don't have all the possibilities you might have, for example, in the US, that you go to a place and they give you, I don't know, 500 million or something together. Yeah.
Olga, what are the particular challenges of running one of these smaller research centres in one of these not so big cities? I mean, that's different from running a big one in the middle of Madrid or Barcelona.
Yeah, from our own perspective, it's not only just to be small and not in a big city, but also being a private center that needs to raise funding from all the sources. In our case, it's very special. We are very niche in this sense, given that we are like the inch between the academic and in the industry. So we are very much applied in the research. So the challenge is just to manage to have just a team of scientists, of course, just focus on their mission, on the research, the interests and the projects that they are developing, and having to deal as well with the need just to be establishing collaborations with the productive sector, the industry, which are going also to be just sources of return for
and
the
attracting
center.
talent as well, presumably.
Talent is also one of the limitations, as we have already been mentioning, in fact, because we are competing with the big hubs for science. So it's not only just the fact of being monetary just attractive, but also being able to retain this talent and being able to grow on the basis of
So what
things.
would your pitch be if I was a bright young scientist, which clearly I'm not?
So you need to sell yourselves in the sense the uniqueness, the excellence of the research that you are doing. And of course, you are in a small city, but you are connected with all the world. We have an extraordinary network of collaborations across the globe.
Joseph?
Well, for me, there are a number of problems. For example, the communication sometimes. If you want to travel to the States or to Europe, it takes more time to do it, so that makes things more difficult. You have the problem sometimes of how to adapt the spouses of the people. For example, in a small city, let's say if you have a PI that has a spouse that is a lawyer or something, maybe some small city don't get a job, so you won't get them. And also, I think a problem usually is that you are surrounded by an environment that does not understand you. For example, you are usually in a university campus that usually sees you as a hostile environment because you are trying to do different things, working a different way, attracting more funding than but they don't intellectualize why they are not getting enough funding. So this is a problem. But especially when you are in a small city, this is what you get. So you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. You have to worry about the positivity of this. The positivity of this is that you have a small city that usually is more humane than a big city, especially if you have families, for example, much more, easier to deal with that. You can walk everywhere, so it's much friendly. You have usually surrounded by a nice environment, so it's good. Usually you are located in university cities, so it's not in the middle of nothing. You have culture. Some of us are connected closely to some big cities, such as Madrid, so it's a good thing. So
the spousal factor, which could work against you, can also be a positive because they might go more land, more space, more time, etc.
Yeah. Well, another negative feature there is anyway for any place, whether it's a big city or a small city, is that usually still in Spain, people are attached to their families and to their communities. So it's very difficult to attract people from other regions of Spain. So this is everywhere. The same in Barcelona if you want to attract some people from Madrid and vice versa. That's a problem that in Spain we have to solve and we haven't solved it. Now, from a scientific point of view, I think going to a small city and a small center is a good way for a new PI. For example, you will be much taken care much better than a big center, for example. You say you have a more nurtured environment. We are expected that they succeed, so we'll do everything we can to just facilitate their work. So it's positive. So, and I never give up. I try to invite people to the center. We know that if we invite 10 people, maybe only 2 people will come up, but eventually we'll end up with 2 people. It's difficult. Some years we won't get anyone. Some other years we'll get 2. The fact is that after these 10 years, we got a lot of people, 80% of them outside Salamanca and 60% from Europe. So, don't worry about the negativity of the places, just try to work in favor of what you are doing, and then sometimes you get results.
Annalisa.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I recognize the scenario. It's the same in Coimbra. I would like to add 2 points there. I think one crucial thing is that you're far away from the decision-making centers. And so you really need to make sure that you get involved, that you travel and go to where the decisions are made, and that you get to know the people and they get to know you, and so you can influence those decisions. This is a crucial thing. The other thing is to have an interesting flow of international speakers. So you need to really reserve the funds to have an international PhD program, for example, and have a very good seminar program. So you have that your students and all the researchers get exposed to very high caliber international research.
Yeah, and that idea of kind of communicating is also important for collaborations as well. That must be one of the challenges of collaborating locally. Sorry, you wanted to come in.
That was I was to say, because one thing very important to attract talent is that the center should be recognized, and you need visibility and recognition, and that's very difficult for the small centers. But one thing is to promote collaborations, because if you get your researchers to get involved in networks, consortiums, international consortiums, you are positioning your center and you are doing it more attractive for the other top talented researchers.
Yeah, and there's obviously a big difference between being in a big city and just being able to pop round the corner for a coffee with somebody versus travelling 200 miles to talk about something as well. Yeah. Anyway, okay, briefly, and then I am really going to throw it over.
But for the visibility, for example, you have to make an extra effort, that's true, but you have to be scouting for people outside every time, you have to invite them. For example, we use our alumni that are outside just to look for people. Every time that any PI goes to a meeting, it's like an ambassador of the center, so it's looking around for postdocs that are looking for jobs. So it takes a lot of effort, much more effort than perhaps if you're in Barcelona, that everybody want to come here. But I mean, it's something that you have to adapt to the system and to do your niche, and eventually the same strategy is to find it.
Maybe. So, and I think also, well, I'm from in Madrid, but I'm from a small city, and I can see that there are some institutes that are very successful in different, regions or comunidades autónomas, no? And those tend to have a cohesive science around, and you're able to find a topic or a theme where you are somehow rather unique, and you can position yourself. So then people will go there because that's the place where whatever technique or so. And we have some examples of institutes here in Spain like that. So, and these have been successful in attracting ERCs, because they are very unique and distinct. And that's not necessarily easy to do, but if you can do that, will be very successful.
And also, it's sort of implicit, but maybe we need to be explicit about it, that one of the things that will attract people is if you've got people who are there, who are having a good time and having a successful research environment, they will then go and advertise on your behalf. You're not trying to lure somebody into some dodgy deal. You're trying to actually get them to somewhere where these researchers would be content. Okay, I'm going to throw it open now to either aspect of this. We're going to go there first. I think that is Manuel. I can't quite see in the light.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. I think directors, you have a responsibility and a power in your institutes. That's right. But you have also a responsibility and a power in the improvement of science in our states, in Portugal and in Spain, in organizing science. And there are several examples. In Switzerland, when the cryo-electron microscopy arrived, in 2 years they organized all the country where to buy the microscopes and how to organize the use. Here has been not like this, clearly. And also, you have the power, and sometimes I see some fear, to go to the decision-making institutions in Spain to improve science. One example is that José was mentioning, university. This fight with institutes and university happens everywhere. We receive more money in the university than in the institute. And I think the institutes, they have the responsibility to change, to force to change our Spanish university, to make more modern for knowledge, careers, and science. So I think this is your responsibility, because you are in this level.
Wow. I think you are right, totally right. I think not only the directors, also the presidents of the association. No, but it's true. I think sometimes we all complain, but we don't do what we have to do. They try to change things, right? We complain at the bar, oh, the science is bad, how will it change? But eventually, when we have to do something, we don't do it. It's more comfortable, be complacent with everybody. I mean, I think I am very, very outspoken for, and I think science has to be integrated with, and not only with directors. I mean, I think, as you mentioned, the universities have a long way to go. I think at least in our case, I know that the university wants to change things. The problem is that the status quo of the university is very difficult to change. There is this famous set from the president of the Edinburgh University, who said that the universities were like graveyards. You cannot ever expect help from the insiders, right? But I think we should catalyze some change in that respect.
I'm a graduate of Edinburgh and I resent that. Marisol and then Nata and then...
So, yes, what you were saying about associations, that there is power in numbers, right? And sometimes you may see one institution, but when you have a scientific association, in our case, we are 1,700 members of all the main cancer centers. Our association is in cancer. And so, yes, you have the power, you can get and talk to the media. One thing is that they may not pay attention, but for example, there are things that we made to change with one of these, for example, one recent example, you guys remember, so all of us, the old ones that were working without fellowships and they were not recognized, it was a movement around Spain, and this was catalyzed by different associations, in particular ours, and this was made to change. So we can slowly, the actions that we can. So we can try to advocate for more grants, and also associations have the possibility to contact and collaborate with different foundations to also get additional funding for when the centers cannot help. So in numbers, there is power.
Right.
And as a director, sometimes, yes, we talk with politicians and we have this power, but we have to be listened also. And sometimes there is also additional ways to do that, because, for instance, in my case, I was running a very small center, and you can think that you have a small influence on in your field, but for instance, maybe you know an initiative of the National Congress to do a panel of experts to assess politicians when they are policymakers, and we have put some people there. So as a center, for a small center, it's a very huge impact if you can shape the politics of the country, right? But sometimes you have to be listened, because it's very difficult to convince politicians to do the things that you are looking for.
Ana Luisa?
Yeah, I would just like to mention that I think the research institutes that are within universities have a huge impact in training and at the university level, because the culture in the research institutes is totally different from the culture at university. The students in that field end up always going through the institute and absorbing this culture that comes from research. So I think the research institutes do a great job in changing, or at least in promoting changes in universities. But I agree that people should get organized. And in Portugal, there have been several initiatives from researchers to try to get organized and influence governmental decisions. It's slow and very inefficient, maybe, but people have been doing this type of.
What would speed it up?
Getting more researchers involved, maybe,
Yeah.
so that people really adhere to this
Some sort
to
of
these movements.
association type thing might be
It's to
useful.
be very, very visible, and very visible in places that matter. Of course, will be at the level of the politicians, but also in social media. And I think we can take advantage of that, so that people know where we are. And then so what happened with the CEICA is when the moment, and José started with that, so the moment the association was very outspoken, so more people joined because they felt, there is somebody there that will kind of, support our
A
demands.
voice, yeah.
Yes, being a voice. So, yeah, there is a lot of power. But I agree, this is slow.
No, continuing with what Manuel said, I think changing the university is easier than the government. For one reason, now the universities are also under a lot of pressure to do innovation, getting ERC grants and everything, so from the governments. So eventually they will have to invest in centers, and they will have to invest in people doing real science in the university. So for me, it will be easier, at least from my perspective. My vice rector of research is very open to suggestions, and in fact, we have a very good collaboration with them. With the government or with the politicians, I think it's more difficult, because my experience is that usually they have made a decision before you are asked to give your opinion about a problem. And it's very difficult to influence them. Usually they use you like a puppet to just justify that they made a decision, but the decision was made a priori. And this is something that the political system in Spain have changed. Maybe we have to help them, but I think all the citizens should help, because otherwise it's a waste of talent and a waste of time for this type of discussions.
Olga?
Just to mention at the end that a small institute alone, or just a director, has not so much impact in how to interact with politicians, but many of us are also just gathering along with different type of networks. We have visibility into that, and also we need to learn how to lobby for what we want to achieve. So it's not in the short term. We need to be just continuously sending the message through, and at the end, little by little, they start listening to you, and you can manage to translate that into new programs. If you want to have different type of funding, different type of research, the only way just to educate in some way. It needs to be done just collectively by not only one, but just a network of
And this is also
organizations.
another scale and location thing.
Yeah.
It's the ones that are closer to the politicians and larger are more likely to formally or informally be lobbying them for their
Yes.
particular position as well. Okay, briefly, I
Yeah.
do want to go to another question from you.
Yeah, although, may I or not?
Of course you may.
Okay. No, that at least in Spain, as we have autonomous communities, let's say that the power is more distributed and we have access at least to our regional things. And I think this lobbying and this is of correct, we should, but I think at least in the regional area, I think the important thing is to develop a relationship with the politicians. So go where they are, go and sometimes just talk about nothing, have a coffee with them. So the next time you talk to them, they know you and they will be receptive. Or if they're thinking of developing a plan, let's say, let's call this guy that I met 3 days ago with a coffee. So I think it's very important, developing this type of relationship with the politicians.
I don't know much about Spanish and Portuguese politicians, but I know politicians in Britain are great about talking about nothing. Okay, we're going to go. We'll come to you in a minute, but we're going to go there first. Microphone's coming in.
Thank you. So it was brought up before how institutional scientific leadership may come with a strategic plan. But I think after the strategic plan and the vision and the mission and all the pretty words, there has to be an implementation plan. And the implementation plan has to be feasible in the short term, but transformative, as we are saying, in the medium to long term. Otherwise, we are doing little politics and not so much results, right? And so I wanted to ask you, given the topic of the discussion, if each of you would give us your top 2 action plan tips to indeed excel in research and to indeed achieve societal impact. Just 2 very small actions that you do in your institutes or in your associations.
Okay, that's very noble of you to volunteer to go first on that.
I mean, I've been a director for 2 years, so I don't know what the impact is going to be. But for instance, in our institution, as I said before, it's a very small center, and we need to improve the identity of the center. So we have done that. Imagine, because you asked about the impact, imagine you can impact the health of 4 million people. Huge. Women health, right? So there is a big gap in health issues and in research, also in clinician themes. And we have established a transversal research area on gender and biological sex research. And we have different levels. For instance, we are focused on women-specific health issues, but also on diseases which are more prevalent in women, and a more transversal vision where we want to do a transversal thing. For instance, we want to introduce gender in the scientific question and to improve the methodologies. We are improving, for instance, quantitative research and analyzing results with a gender lens. So in the end, we want to create like an identity for the center, as Marisol said before, and we have established collaborations with European, the Women Brain Institute in Europe, and also with an NIH, because this year has been an initiative for in the Joe Biden administration. There is a White House initiative for women health, and there is a very big opportunity to collaborate and to get funding for this. So, I mean, you can do this little thing, but maybe, I don't know if it's going to change, but it's a different thing at least. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so going directly to your question, for me, I think the most important thing is to attract very good people. So the talent attraction is critical, and then to support them. And you have to support them with maybe a startup package, if you have the means to do so, appropriate space, but also if new people come in, they need to be connected to what's around them. So you need to provide ways for collaborations to get started, for people to be able to navigate the system, which is sometimes very complex and very different from the system that they are coming from. So you need a very good grants office to support grant applications. You need to organize, for example, area retreats so that people get to know each other and that the newcomer becomes able to connect with the other researchers in the field. So this kind of support for me is really important. And promoting a collegial ambience in which the newcomer can get other researchers to read his or her grant proposals and get support, get feedback and get support there. So attracting very good people and supporting them at different levels, for me, it's what can transform institutes.
And are these collaborations always scientific? I mean, is it also collaboration with your community so that people feel that they're related to, in your case, Coimbra, and actually part of what they're coming to?
Of course. It's very commonly it starts with common interests, common research interests. But then, if you provide the opportunity for people to know each other and to have personal relationships, that of course helps a lot.
Yeah. Jose?
Yeah, well, it's in a similar way. Of course, you have to bring the best. That is critical. If you don't bring the best, you cannot do anything. And then you have to support them also, but putting pressure outside of them. Usually what I tell them is, if it's a junior scientist, is I don't want you to give me 10 papers after 4 years. Just give me a very good paper. That is important. That they should focus in science, in good science. That is the critical point. And then it's what you said, supporting them, of course, technically, etc. With mentorship, usually our junior faculty come with an internal mentor just to guide them through the internal system or the university system, and an external mentor more for more big picture questions. So it's a question, it's a process. It's also a learning process because sometimes you try one thing and they don't work, so you change. So and also it has to be flexible because not all the junior scientists are the same. So some people might need some other things because some people are too ambitious, some people are less ambitious. So you have to adapt the recipe for each person. And this is something that a small center has the ability to do because you can individualize more the mentoring.
It's another positive. Marisol?
Yes, so, and in the context of scientific associations, so what we can do is to help and in all of these activities that are important for the different institutes, but just on a more global level. For example, and I think I can give you examples that worked very well for us. We're talking about training and mentorship. So in ACECA Joven particularly, we have programs that are one-on-one, but we have also peer mentoring, meaning people from the same state. And these are from different institutions that they're going through similar status. So this can help. So as societies, we can identify just needs, I would say, for women in science. Women in science, most of the centers have to have a policy in place right now, but they may or may not be, active. So what did we do? So we give visibility to. Now we have 700 or more women that we actually kind of give visibility on our. We have a map for women and women. We have a program called Conocelas. So I guess we can help in these aspects of also trying to get funding for, as there are small grants for people to get started. So that's also through associations that people can apply. And ultimately, I think very importantly, communication. So we can give visibility to, so whenever we find that somebody gets an award, so we get and advertise. When somebody gets a grant, we advertise. And so we try to be active on this. And so these are maybe actions that are complementary to your institutions that can help on a more global basis.
Does that include, when you talk about good communication, it's getting people who are natural leaders to understand what it is about themselves that makes them a good leader? Because sometimes people try and teach you, and actually they think what they're doing is this, but actually what they're doing is that.
Yes, they're both ways. So on the one hand, so we have workshops, for example, with La Caixa that I'm going to say, we had one that was very nice on initiation to innovation. And so there, actually, this first call was to help people to pitch their projects. Okay, so it was a 3-minute elevator pitch. It worked very well, so next year we have again. But so this is now to teach, or to train, I would say, scientists to communicate better scientifically and to the society. But the other way around is also to let the society know what do they do. And that actually is so.
Yeah, and that's, I'm sorry, but that's also very particularly important because when it comes to larger institutions versus smaller ones, at the larger institutions, people are more likely to have encountered people who've given them pitching practice and experience. And sometimes you see a not so good project getting through because it was pitched really and framed really well, and a better project, people haven't got the time to realise that. Okay, I'm going to go to, there was the next person along had a question, point, yes, and then we'll come to you. We're coming to you.
I had an idea inspired by our earlier discussion. I think that our colleagues that are involved in impact assessment, I think it would be good if they would come up with criteria to assess the impact of a research director.
Do you feel comfortable with that?
They do that in the US. The US is very clear. So you have an evaluation from top to bottom, bottom to top. That's something here, not all the...
I fully agree after my tenure.
So not all directors are evaluated, and I think they should.
Yeah, Nate, you're probably very happy about this because you set back already.
No, I think maybe it's useful in the end, but we are with a lot of pressure, and we have to remember that some of us, we are not professional directors. I mean, we are scientific, which are doing for a short time or a long time, we are doing managing activity. But so, yes, maybe it's very useful, but we have also to be very considered under this point of view. Mm-hmm.
Also, this is science. Innovation is not imitation. Sometimes you'll have somebody who's really good at this, but it doesn't fit that template that you might be testing them on.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. Of course, directors should the execution of directors should be implemented, but that has to go along with other things, right? For example, usually in Spain, most centers don't have budget for a good strategic plan. So eventually, we're getting funds from one place, from another, and we manage what we can do. So in order to be, I mean, ideally, you have to have a strategic plan that is funded with some core funding, and you should be responsible of the implementation of this thing. But I don't think that a director per se should be responsible for the whole center if it's not endowed with this type of funding, for example. Other thing is that, you can be evaluated by the number of people you have attracted or the number of projects that you have attracted as well. Well, there are, of course, scientific parameters that you can value and the impact of the center in the whole community. But in order to be accountable, I mean, we should have a budget according to your responsibility as well.
Okay, Alfonso, you've been waiting ages.
Thank you. No, I want to say I have the impression that the elephant in the room is bureaucracy. So the autonomy of the centers depends obviously of having a budget to invest, but also of having the capacity to choose the people you want, to hire the people you want, to buy the equipment you want or you need. And we know that despite, at least my impression, that we are getting, at least in Spain, worse and worse. We are getting more bureaucratic and more layers of control overall. So I wanted to just to bring the topic and to hear you on how you feel your autonomy is threatened by increasing layers of bureaucracy.
It's awful. Just an example, I had to submit a couple of years ago an intermediate report on a grant for the center, and that report took only 1,500 pages. Oh. That's enough. So it's awful. I mean, the question is that I think you cannot fight with reality. This is our reality. We might change it, but that will take a long time. So if you are complaining about all the time about your intrinsic problems that you cannot solve, you will not do anything. You have to adapt and somehow try to facilitate your work with a program manager, something that helps you out with this bureaucracy. But my point is that problems that are unsolvable, you cannot solubilize them. in time. So just forget about them and just go for other things.
Okay, one problem we do have is we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask now for the shortest answers you're comfortable with, and I'll ask for people to phrase their questions in the shortest way they can, if there are more questions from the audience, and I think there were. Okay, coming in here, on your right.
Yeah, it's on a different topic. Should we be worried about this? And is there anything we need to transform in our research centers?
Nice simple question. Who wants to take it? Anne-Louise?
I can say, so of course, we all have been a victim of this. It seems to me that the scientific careers are so difficult these days. It's so demanding. The training is so long, and it's so difficult to get a permanent position that there's other options out there that are equally interesting, and where the path at least for a postdoc, seems to be easier. So that's one thing. So maybe this is like a cycle, and we are at a point when there's a lot of people doing science, so the careers become very, very competitive, and so there's an adjustment. Maybe that's it. But I think having mentoring programs for PhD students and postdocs is something that can help, so that they can have. So very often it seems to me that they're left alone in deciding their trajectory, and of course it's their decision. But to have feedback from, of course, their supervisor, direct supervisor, their group leader, for example, but also from people outside of their immediate sphere that can give feedback and give perspective to their situation is something that can help. I'm not sure it's going to solve the problem of postdocs in science, but I think it's helping the career development of these people. So we're setting up this type of mentoring programs for postdocs.
Sure. Say briefly.
Yeah, just two things. One is it's a positive one, at least in Spain. In Spain, up to 10 years ago, the only option that a person had in science was to do a postdoc and becoming a PI. If you were not a PI, you don't have any options. So it's nice to have this option. And also it's nice to have companies that can hire scientists. So that is positive. Now, on the other side, it's true, but this, I think, is not a problem of the center itself. It's a problem of the scientific system as a whole, and not in Spain or in Portugal, everywhere, that the system is broken. You cannot generate 10 times as many postdocs as you eventually can end up absorbing. So we have to reflect somehow in how we manage this, whether we should implement like a senior position in the labs, as in the UK sometimes. I don't know. We have to reflect on this because clearly the system is broken. Students see that the system is broken and they are not willing to just tread into that. So, the ambitious one will do it because they like it. But most of the people, they have families, they have, they want to eat every day. So they go for the company.
Yes,
so briefly.
The system is broken, but some countries are already acting. They recognize this and they're acting. They're acting how? Increasing the budget for science and increasing the budget for the grants, particularly for postdocs. And for that, we need to advocate. I know that it's very hard, and we keep telling the administration, but that's and this is happening. So in England, in the Netherlands, in different institutions in the US, because they have funding for that and they increase. This is one way. And the other, I think what you were talking about mentoring, not only that, so there's networks. So trying to have networks so people know, the ones that they are abroad, they can come, and the ones they want to go abroad, so have this. In ASECA, we have ASECA Internacional, but something that maybe that would help. But definitely, in the end, a situation of money, I think, frankly.
Yeah, but salaries are not only the only problem, because the problem with the scientific career is what happens after you finish your postdoc. Okay? This is the black hole. Mm-hmm. Nobody has answers to that. Not the States, not the UK, nobody. It's how to deal with this type of people. They can stay forever, but I don't think that it's good that a person continues as a postdoc forever. So this is a problem that I'm not smart enough. Maybe the artificial intelligence can answer us.
Although I'm not a cosmologist who knows about black holes.
I'll check with ChatGPT, but I cannot find a way of solving this problem.
The career development. So we always talk about many centers to have a career development plan so you can grow and you can attract people that are competitive. If you don't,
But when you compare data from Spain with other countries in Europe, in our country there is a less proportion of PhD people who is working on companies. And I think that we should pave the way to improve this transition, because there is a lot of positions in companies, scientific data with, that you can work on.
We're running rapidly out of time, but I'm going to take moderator's privilege and squeeze in a question of my own, because there's one group that I feel strongly about that we haven't mentioned, which is journalists and the media, particularly if you're from a smaller research centre. Do you need to work closely with the media? Because otherwise journalists tend to be very lazy. They will go and, it's like in the UK, they'll take a story from Oxford and Cambridge that's weak over a story from the University of Birmingham that's strong just because they've got better contacts.
Yeah. Well, let's say if we're talking about the local journals, this is a piece of cake.
Yeah.
It's very easy to interact with them. Now, the difficulty is going national. That
or
is the
international.
problem. Yeah, so there, you have to try to get, like for example, in Spain, there are like some foundations that ask you about papers developments, so you can give them their opinion about new papers, so you are exposed. Sometimes there are like scientific-oriented programs in TV that you can benefit from and going there and speak about your center. Sometimes even you can get the TVs going to your center to do some small reports.
Because this can be useful to build yourself up if you're as a personality, so you're a known figure.
And also, it depends on the center itself. For example, for a cancer center, it's much easier to sell news than for maybe another type of center, right? Yeah. Because, eventually you end up with a new development, you have a new, CAR-T implementation. So this is something that is very easy to sell. So in our case, it's not that difficult. We have to fight because, most news are coming from centers in Barcelona or in Madrid, just because the journalists know them. But well, you have to go there. It's like, the Mahoma and the mountain. If the mountain doesn't come to you, you should go to the mountain. So.
Right. Oh, you've got mountains and blockers. Marisol, this applies particularly to you because you're not just a cancer researcher, you're a cancer patient, and you've used that to actually be part of something that's been, raised the profile and made a personal action to this.
Yes. So this is, so I guess most of you know that, yes, I work in cancer research, but I happen to be also an active patient right now. So, and I can tell you that science and impact and communication and needs are very different from the other side of the desk, right? So, and communication there is very important, and implicating the society is very important. And implicating, in our case, is cancer, but could be other diseases. Getting close to the patients' associations is essential, I think. And now I'm going to give you my pitch of why. So I've been reflecting of, now as a patient and being part of patient associations, and also through CaixaResearch, which we also do a lot of patient advocacy. So why is that important? So in patients, when, it's our life, and it's our life or the life of our kids or our families, when it's at stake, we have a lot of power. And so patient associations can actually help, for example, move forward compounds. We just got 2 compounds for breast cancer, but for other diseases approved because patient associations really pressed on that. Hepatitis, vaccines, and so on. So many examples on this. So one is to push forward our research, and that gets to actually application, and also to help other patients to be part of clinical trials, for example, so they participate. This is one thing. But patients, and also that's the communication is very important with scientists, and patient associations, very important for fundraising. So we know in Spain we have associations, and like this, so the ACC, Association for Cancer Research, FEROCRIS, and also other ones, that they raise a lot of funds, and now for research and for researchers. And they do that because they also understand and they talk with them, etc. things. So this is one thing. And the third point that I now thought that we should talk about this, because myself, when I was asked, and these now initiatives to get the patients being part of evaluation of grants, and many associations and foundations include that, and more so, particularly when there's big grants and big funding. And initially I thought, well, having a patient, evaluating a grant, scientific grant, and what is that? Well, I have to say that I'm running a committee on this, and they are so not every patient should do that. They can be selected and educated. But the patients they read the grant, they write the grants, even with more care than scientists sometimes. Of course, you are not evaluating everything. You're evaluating impact, you're evaluating, ethical aspects, many things. So going back to the, I guess, crosstalk between patients and scientists, there's a lot that I think needs to be strengthened because there is an opportunity. There's an opportunity also for us to get our research, our biomarkers, our treatments, get into the people that need it.
Okay, Meta, very briefly, because we're running out of time.
That links with the idea of citizen science, which is paying a lot of attention receiving a lot of attention because we should include patients, not only in the donating samples or disseminating results, but also during all the process of our scientific projects, since the very beginning, since shaping the question, the scientific, because that way we are sure that we are doing something for the real world. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are just about out of time, but if somebody's got a really good climactic question that they want to finish with, no pressure.
Yes, no. I would like really to take the opportunity because here we have excellent researchers. And it's very rare to have so many excellent researchers from so many different fields at the same time. So going back to the session, we are talking about scientific leadership. And I think we all agree, you can be an excellent researcher, but not always a very good group leader. That is not the same. So you need to raise the skills in order to be a good group leader. And you can have that. You learn how to deal with conflicts and management and money and all that. But leadership is a different level, and we are all different, so we won't be the same leaders. But if we are thinking about we need to take this opportunity to have excellent researchers and have a new generation for scientific leaders in the next 5 years, I will ask the panel to tell me one quality they think they might have. So that's my question.
That was a good climactic question. Jose, I'm going to start with you again.
I think to begin with, you have to have a vision of the center. You want to have a plan of what you want to achieve. And also, you have to be a permanent unsatisfied person, because in a center, excellence is never an end point, it's a process, and you can always get better. So that is the critical point. We discussed that at the beginning. I think also you should have some empathy for people. You should be able of connecting to people, not only with scientists or students outside the center. We have talked about politicians. We have talked about patients. We have talked about journalism. You have to be open and available to them and have some social skills in order to convince them and interact with them. And also, I think you have to have what we discussed at the very beginning is the developing this sense, being able of developing this sense of belonging to the center of everybody, from the cleaners to the scientists. That is very important. And finally, just to finish,
this was a list of one.
I think the critical point is that being a director is not a line in your CV, it's not for your lab, it's for the center. So you have to be committed to for the center, and that will eventually transpire to everybody, because if they feel that you are working for the center, eventually everybody will work for the center. So for me, this is the critical point.
Ana-Luisa, one.
Yes, I think this aspect of getting people engaged is critical, and something that we didn't talk about is how people communicate with the leadership. And so I think we need the decision-making bodies that have communication channels for all levels at the institute. So for PIs, but also for postdoc representatives, for PhD representatives, for representatives of the infrastructures, of the support offices. So I think this is something that needs to be implemented, that many institutes are doing, but having channels of communication with the board so that everyone in the institute feels that they can influence decisions that are being made I think it's a critical thing.
As I think George Bernard Shaw said, the greatest mistake with communication is being confident that it has happened. Because often two people talking are not actually communicating. Olga.
Yeah, well, in fact, a leader is anyone who has any group of people just under their direction in this sense. From my personal perspective, of course, before just starting to lead the Foundation Medina in Granada, I've been just 19 years in a private company, in a pharma company. Each time you have a position of responsibility, there are just training courses in leadership. There is nothing. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. You are just training how to manage people, how to just be able to develop your team to succeed. And you're responsible for that. So this is something that could be also translated to the other institutions. You can be a scientist, but you also need to be trained when you don't have the skills. So this is also, I see that it's lacking in the scenario, and it would help a lot. People just reach into this position. They don't have any background in managing people, despite they have been leading a small group of scientists during their career.
Yes, you're suddenly expected to grow a new skill set.
You need a training process, and this is recurrent step.
Nathan.
I would say emotional intelligence. I think you need to deal with your own emotions and with the emotions of the other people of the team or the center. And that's the most important skill for me.
Marisol.
I mean, I agree with everything, and being the last, there's not much new I could say. I guess when one thinks about a leader, so a leader is a person that people want to work with. Or if you're in an institute, a leader, you make it so people want to be there because they are happy, because they feel that they grow. So somebody that can make others grow is what we were talking, that you don't do it just for you. And that, of course, you need empathy, you need a lot of energy. In a way, you develop a little bit of thick skin, but not that much, because sometimes the people that don't listen to others then become like, you're like there in your corner office, and then you don't communicate. So I think this ability, a person that can create a team, that people at all levels believe that, we are helping, growing each other, I think it will be a much better leader. It's easier to say than to do, but...
That's the nature of conversations. Yeah. But transformative, Jose, you want to come back in one more time because your list wasn't long enough, I know.
Just one point. I mean, you can be a director or not. This is your personal choosing, right? It has its benefits, has its cons, but it's a personal decision. But I think what I would entice you is that you should participate in the life of the centers, in running a facility or running a committee or participating in equipment purchasing, etc. I think this is very important because you cannot be a neutrino in a center in which you are not interacting with no one. The centers have to have their own blood, their own life, and for that, everybody has to participate. That is critical.
Thank you all for participating in this, and particularly can we please thank our panel for something that was transformative and informative as well. Annalise Roig, Megan Redders,